Okay, just start. She's going to trim all this.
She's
So
going
today we're here with Amanda Dunas from the Positive Thinking Clinic, and today we're talking about feelings, which is one of the core concepts of our Positive Living Skills programs, wellbeing programs. And so today we're going to delve a little bit further into that and learn a little bit more. So I guess we could start, Amanda, by asking you, as an owner and director of early childhood care centres, how important do you think it is for children to be learning about their feelings young at that age?
Okay, so that's an amazing question, and I can't wait to answer that. But thank you to both of you. Thank you, Joe, Kath, and Catherine, for having me be so honoured to speak about your program, and in particular unit number 2, which is feelings. And yes, it's so important. I must say, I have the privilege of being in my counselling and hypnotherapy and psychotherapy clinic, and in the early childhood industry, 4 of my early learning centres under your Positive Living Skills. Thank goodness for that, because we're guided so well by your resources and programs. Now, when it comes to unit 2, feelings, I can't stress enough how important it is to have this from that age, because to be quite honest, any age, feelings are relevant and feelings are important. So imagine a 50-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 20-year-old coming to learn or doing their own self-development on feelings, expressing, identifying, communicating in any way, receiving, experiencing. I realise, as I've been in childcare since 1990s, that teaching our little people about feelings is never a waste of time. It's actually so important. And over time, and with the resources that you give us points to work from. And everything that you give us, it's like you hand feed us and then say to us, make it work for your kids, make it work for your staff, make it work for the community that you have. So each year, when we use your resources, we use them differently because the needs of our kids are so different.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we feel confident that all of the learning outcomes are achieved for our early learning years, the learning framework. So we know that we're covering absolutely everything. So I thank you for that. And yes, it's extremely important, feelings.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, especially little ones, and it's important for them to be validated, isn't it? Really, and when they're learning about themselves, they're learning how to how to interact with other children and their behaviours, and of course that's one of the things we really considered as a priority, to understanding giving children, particularly in the early childhood stage, because as you know we start in early childhood and our program runs up to year 6, but starting in early childhood, it's so important to teach children, the awareness of how their feelings and their thoughts interact. And that's really what we focus on in the early part of the program. So it's good to hear that, you're using all the resources in different ways.
That's right. And teaching children how to use the right language rather than saying, I'm angry, well, I'm feeling angry. And so we help them regulate and identify with absolutely every emotion. Like if some of the kids think that there's only 3 feelings, some of the adults think there's only 5 feelings, but there's a whole vocabulary that we can then uniquely apply, which means we can uniquely shift our emotions. Because at the end of the day, it's okay to feel anything. It's so natural and it's normal.
So important that you say that, because one of the things that we sometimes as adults, when we're trying to potentially support somebody, or someone goes, I feel really bad about that, or don't feel bad, or don't feel this, it's easy for us to tell people not to feel a certain way, where when we can learn how to be empathetic, you know, and we develop that understanding that we're actually meant to feel the full range of emotions. So that's an important factor in our work. And, you know, certainly at the early childhood level, they're just starting to understand what a feeling is and identifying happy from sad, but as you say, expanding it a lot more from that into frustration and what does feeling loved feel like, and all of those sorts of things. So we try to give a lot of resources. So there's posters and things like that, and then the educators find their ways of linking that into the being, belonging, becoming, linking that into the other ways that they want to do it. A couple of the services we work with cut the little feeling spaces out and make a game out of that and pick the feeling, and then the child, you know, role plays that feeling, and then they apply that to certain circumstances. So yeah, it's good for us to remember that all feelings are valid, and how do we just find ways to process or understand or you know, be okay with feelings, and then how to validate them. That's a really important one as well.
Yeah, your feelings cards, the resource that you give us, we use that in almost every room, and it goes to show how important it is. We know how to use that in the baby's room. We know how to use that age appropriately in the preschool room. So like in the preschoolers can turn that into a game when we cut out, and they've got happy, sad, angry, relaxed, surprised, loved, scared, excited, embarrassed, confident, worried, and shy. So then they play the doubling game, or we use it to make sentences. And sometimes we use the feeling like embarrassed. Now, we know what it's like to be embarrassed, but once we allow ourselves to communicate it so relaxed, then the kids aren't embarrassed to give it a go. And so we might use, well, the way I like to do it is I'll use excited or worried, and I'll put it in a way of, one day I was worried about something, so that they know I've had that feeling. And then I'll say, and then I gave it a go anyway. So I finish the whole sentence to show them that we don't have to get stuck on that feelings. We can move out of that channel. Speaking of channels, there's that great changing channels that you guys have, and we've recreated that so many times, you know, the remote control.
That's great. That's really good.
Look, the kids love changing channels. Is one of, I guess, the core or key. I mean, there's everything in the program's important, but one of that's the feedback we're getting from parents, educators, and then the children themselves around changing channels is amazing, because it gives that child some, you know, everyone understands what a remote control is, that they're choosing, you know, and obviously kids are very technology literate from really young ages now, but they can then choose the channel that they want to be on, and they understand that they have the remote control in their own hand. So, you know, that's, I interviewed a parent and her daughter up here in Queensland, and some months ago now, and the mum was saying, my daughter, her name is Annalise, well, she changes channels now. So when she, you know, when she wants, she'll go, Mummy, I'll change channels in a minute. And then a minute later, she goes, okay, I'm happier now. And it just gives that child that start of feeling empowered, that they actually have somewhere in there's an understanding that there's a choice, and that they can make it and learn it as a skill, and that their feeling they had was valid. But what we don't want is the feelings that we don't want to feel over a long time to stick around. So when we're feeling sad for long periods of time, well, that's obviously a lead into, you know, as adults, potential depression. So we want to be going, well, if I'm entitled to feel sad, it's okay to feel sad, but when I'm ready, I want to change that, and I want to have some strategies that I can use to enable that are going to help me to do that. So yeah, that changing channels.
And that's the important thing here, isn't it? Giving those kids the skills and for them to recognise those channels, which we've talked about, but of how they can change their channels. So that as you would know, there's lots and lots of activities within it, and conversations, because the little ones like to have a conversation, and we talked about before, like they might want to remember happy things, or last week we discussed highlights. That's, you know, all of these concepts prime each other, so to be able to build this, so they're building their skills all the way along to be able to support themselves, so that they can, and they know how to change those channels and what channel they want to go to. So that is very empowering. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, it gives them that sense of control, that they are in charge. And like you mentioned earlier on, when they're ready. And that's a real key term there, because one thing I don't like to do when I'm witnessing a child experiencing a feeling is I don't want to take that feeling away. So if a child is crying, I don't want you to say, stop crying. I've had adults in my clinic saying, so hard to cry, I was never allowed to cry. And so I really believe in, you're feeling sad, it's okay to feel sad. So we can support our children through the feelings and with our language, appropriate language, without stealing the show, let them experience that. And we may need to safely guide them away from that, so they don't get stuck in the sadness for too long. And even using the remote control, we've even, like when we've got a volume button on it, so that we can pull down the noise a little bit, or so that became, I don't know how we discovered that, or if you guys gave us that.
That's a good idea.
Put the volume down, and or whatever. Like, it's even we use the remote control for, like, well, it's time to wind down now because we're getting ready for rest time. So this remote control that you guys have, or the changing channels, it's been such a amazing resource that can be evolved and adapted in so many ways. But the concept of feelings, the importance of that, especially once we know that they're so related to our thoughts and our physiology, it's in the triangle. So it's like extremely important how we talk about our feelings, and then how we behave according to our feelings. It's all related. Do we change thoughts and then change feelings? Do we change feelings and then change thoughts? Do we change actions? Like, everything is interrelated. So mastering all of it to some level, some degree, becomes extremely valid, valuable, and teaching them, like you've given us on the resources, to identify, to acknowledge, to say, okay, so what is that message? Look, I know anxiety is not a word that we use for the young kids, but anxiety is a message, isn't it?
And it's how does it feel in your body, and what is it, you know, and those sorts of things. And
that's the thing with the feelings. It's the children are actually learning about themselves and how they do physically react to their feelings. So what that impact it has on them. So then recognizing that they might get hot and sweaty when they're feeling themselves get angry, or they might feel sick in the stomach, and this is related to me being worried about something, or upset. So it's all really valid, and we need to start, you know, that's why we're so passionate about it, because we must start young, you know, teaching these kids, giving them the language, and giving them the freedom to be okay about it all, and then giving them some skills so that they can help themselves, which we do throughout the whole program, as you know, and we're going to talk about each concept as we go along.
But one of the things I thought is important too, when you mentioned language there, is we intentionally support the educators in terms of how to speak about the feelings with the children. So one of the, I was visiting one of the early learning centres up here, and they were telling me about how they would talk about feelings with the children, and it'd be, how did that make you feel, and how did this make you feel, and how did that make you feel? And what we did is we chatted about changing that language, and this is how we've got it intentionally written in the resources, to how do you feel when, or how did you feel when? So when X event occurred, what was your feeling about it? But you can hear in that it takes away, it adds empowerment to the child, because of an event happens, I feel a certain way, but it didn't make me feel that way. So I'm not tied into feeling a certain way when a certain thing happens, and I've got some opportunity to be more empowered about how I choose. I mean, they don't understand that cognitively at that age, but the language being used that way with them over time can build that. And so we put that little sort of script in there. I feel happy when I get a present. I feel loved when I get a hug from my mum. I feel, but it's not like, well, that person made me angry when he or she did X, Y, or Z. Because what we want to do over a long period of time is to break this cycle of unkindness, of bullying, of violence, all the things that are in our societies that we're trying to treat. We want to be able to go, well, if I've got that grounding at the beginning, then I might not develop those issues later on.
And the responsibility for our own responses and behaviours. That's the thing that we really want to do. So yeah, throughout the whole program.
And also what the amazing thing about doing these feelings with the children is, like you kind of indicated and you triggered that for me to remember to tell you, it helps with a flexible mindset. So introducing their feelings and their way of self-talk and identifying and self-reflection, that allows our children then to have a flexible mindset. And another great concept is, not only is it important for children to identify feelings within themselves, but becoming observers of other children who are experiencing emotions and feelings.
Yes.
Because once we become observers of others, eventually we learn to become the observer of ourselves as well and get out of that drama.
Yeah.
So it's a skill. These are small skills that, like you said, maybe cognitively they don't understand right now, but that we evolve. And so we're giving them their foundation, stepping stones. So when they're older, they'll be pretty good at what they're doing for where they're at, given the resources they have at that time, because they were exposed to it in early child care. And given opportunities to experience feelings, to talk feelings, to re-talk them, to reevaluate them, to label them, and to identify, and all of that stuff that we do with all the feelings. It's really important for later on.
Yeah, and to communicate with each other how they're feeling, so they'll be able to express that, because it's inclusive. They're all in there together, and these conversations are happening, these activities are taking place, the educators are modelling. So really the children's communication skills on talking about expressing how they feel just becomes so much easier for them, and they're not sitting there holding it in. Well, that's certainly the feedback we've been getting, which is really great, because that's exactly the outcome we set about to get. So
and just the empathy, being able to imagine how somebody else might feel, but at the same time appreciate that they might feel a lot different to you about the same event. So some of the concepts in there, I think one of the lessons is called kindness, one of them is called empathy. So it's about imagining. So Possible goes on a little adventure, and the children are imagining how he might feel in that situation. But they're also getting an appreciation that I might feel a certain way when something happens, but you might feel a different way when that happens, that same event happens to you, but both of our responses are okay and valid. So building that empathy. We had one bit of feedback about a young boy who was biting. So that was a behaviour they were looking to address. And once they started doing the feelings unit, and he started understanding through, facilitated conversations with the educator, that the other child in that scenario felt upset, felt sad, felt hurt, felt, a lot of different ways. In result of that, he's actually stopped that behaviour, because he understands now what the outcome is for another human being, and he's been able to. So they were just gobsmacked about that. They were so
But he was able to language that, I think, wasn't he? I think the feedback was he was able to language. He didn't know.
And he goes up and said sorry. And so he said sorry, and then he
don't want to hurt you.
Yeah. Very cute.
Yeah, it is cute.
And impactful.
That's really important, because even all the resources that you give us and the stories. Stories teach any age. Even in hypnotherapy, we do storytelling, just so that we can make that shift in our mind. And so the value of stories, when we include feelings and we allow children to create their own stories with feelings, it's such a, again, it's mindset, being open, being creative, and it allows them to experience it right through. And the key in the end is saying, so what action can we take? Because that's where we get stuck, not knowing how to behave or taking the wrong action. So we prefer to then lead them to a positive action of kindness or of respect or of calmness. And one of your suggestions, which I really agree with, is practicing mindfulness as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any age, really, we can do that. We can do that while we're playing. We don't have to sit still. A child can be practicing mindfulness during painting.
Yes.
So we do stories while the kids are busy. Kids can be in the sandpit, for example, and we're telling stories about feelings. So it's a really great opportunity for all the kids to learn about feelings and emotions.
And I think that's an important point before too, Amanda, about how, because what often is the case when we're experiencing troubles as we get older is a lack of self-compassion, you know, so it's easy to be hard on other people when you're hard on yourself. So if you're developing kindness for others, you're also developing kindness for yourself, and you can, you know, you're developing that empathy, then that compassion. And if we had some more of that in the world, you know, things would be a lot easier for kids as they get older, and of course adults. I mean, when you look at what happens with bullying, it's a, you know, it's a very complex issue, and there's a lack of self-esteem from both sides of the equation, and that's often just because there's a lack of self-compassion and acceptance. So that's such an important thing for us to learn.
Absolutely. You know, your resources, I must say, also help educators, because really they're valid for any age, let's be honest. So if we're teaching children about feelings, aren't we ourselves learning about feelings?
Yes, exactly.
So it's really skill build, especially for parents, because we get to share. So we're on the same page, we're in partnership. Positive living schools, our childcare centres, our kids, our educators, we can speak the same language and support everybody. So it's holistic when you think about it, and it's easy, it's simple, it's organic, it's nothing that you have to study long and hard. It's going back to simple ways. Why cover up things? Let's be natural.
That's it.
And it's linking in so that, you know, we learn these things, but it doesn't mean that's the end of it. It means that's just the start. That's just the grounding or the fundamental or the foundational. And then, you know, we've just been talking about this today, and then helping children learn that when it's not feeling okay over time, then you need to say, I want to talk to somebody, I need support. And as you get older, you need to be able to go and see somebody like yourself. And that's got to be an okay conversation to have too, so that, yes, you can do certain things and you might be doing certain strategies and you might be working your best to change channels, but it's not changing. So that's when you need to go, well, now I need to talk to somebody, I need help. I can't just always manage this myself. So I need that support. And that's where that holistic comes in. It's the educators, the children, the families, but then the community support like you provide, to then go, well, let's talk about this in a different setting, and let's expand on it. And you said something great before about how the educators, you know, get that learning just by reading it. And I know we've had people say to us, you know, in teaching changing channels, then they start to think, well, what channel am I on at the moment? You know?
I could do with changing my own channel.
Maybe I need to change some of my channels, you know.
That's so true.
Changing channels, and we see how we can say it in a humorous way, and it's still a learning concept as well.
Because we're human. I mean, you know, that's the thing. We as adults, we've become educated ourselves as adults, and look, some families they do have that emotional intelligence at home, and they do have that support and that environment and upbringing. A lot don't though. It's not something that we learned
We
as
never learned it.
parents. And I never learned it.
I
And
never learned it.
I'm, like I've said before, I got quite a shock, for me to
Yeah.
realise that obviously we have strategies, but we're not consciously aware of them. So, there's strategies that we kick in and create along the way. And then, when life sort of hits you a bit too much, or, you've let your guard down for whatever reason, then that's when it creeps up. And giving these kids this awareness and empowering them, it's absolutely vital. And it's vital that we start young and we really do embed in a holistic way, because it gives the effective communication required as well for not just the children to the educators, the children to each other, the children to their families, they're educators to families, because there's sometimes some tricky conversations you've got to have about things that you may have identified within a young child, and sometimes parents, may not want to hear that, or for whatever reason it might be something, just they've been noticing, and it might be something different, or they've been working out justifying things. And that's effective communication, because if everyone's using that same common language, it offers that way forward. So I hope we really hope, we definitely are on a mission with this, and we're really really focused on making sure we do get this into early childhood and start
and to the primary schools to follow it through, because there's a lot of talk at the moment about the school system, and there's been a recent survey by the New South Wales Teachers Federation, and they're saying, there's not enough school counsellors and there's not enough support services and that sort of thing. But those sorts of support services happen outside of that learning room, that room where those children are sitting each day. And we want to help the teachers bring it into that room so that they can actually learn about the students' mental health while they're doing their job, without it being scary for them to do or hard for them to do, and those sorts of things. So we're on that mission from a primary school perspective, as well as helping early learning services to have the tools to start early, because the problems are presenting earlier and earlier now.
It's really important that as many childcare centres as possible jump on board for your positive living skills program. I've been with you guys for I don't know how many years now, and all of my centres are with you. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because it's such a contribution to the emotional and mental wellness for children. So why would we not do that? So I really do hope that you reach a lot more childcare centres, early learning centres, and schools.
Thank you. Well, we're trying. It's tricky, because there's, with everything that's happened now particularly within Australia, we've had the drought, the bushfires, the floods, so much, and now we've had COVID and the mental health. So there are, particularly we know that suicide in young people have escalated, and there's clusters of suicide. And we do need that attention. We do need that focus to support.
And self-harm.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've got to start thinking about, these kids that are coming up and starting, we've got to start supporting them now, and so they don't get to here. They're sort of not to that point. So it's a mission. But, it's really great. We're so grateful for your support, and you are a real cheerleader, which we really appreciate. Because you totally understand the message that we're wanting to deliver, and the way we've come about this as well. So, so we appreciate that.
Much appreciated.
And I'm grateful too. So thank you, ladies. Thank you very much for having this opportunity today to be able to just share our knowledge on feelings and how important this unit is in your program, and what it's done for our early learning centres, and what it does for our children from young through to old. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you so much.
All right, well, I'll stop recording now.